Welcome to Hey Podcasters, where we bring live discussion with our podcasters' guests, find answers, and gain new answers to some of the most challenging questions about podcasting. We believe it's the best way to get tips and learn.
Hello, everyone. Wow, Margo Lovett here one more time. You know, we are still celebrating podcasters globally. And this is such a wonderful, awesome day. If I could just stop fangirling, I'll be all right. So let me tell you, the gentleman that you are looking at, this wonderful gentleman here, you've heard him on other podcasts, such as Nail the Sale, Conscious Millionaire, both phenomenal podcasts. He is an influencer, a difference maker. Ask me how I know. Podcaster, entrepreneur. They love his to pieces in Tampa Bay area. So without further ado, how could I leave it out? How did I get to know this gentleman from PodFest Expo? Oh my goodness, Mr. Chris Krimitsos. Thank you for coming.
Margo, thank you for having me on. I'm really excited for this interview.
Oh, we can't celebrate podcasters without including you. It's just simply impossible. That's all I can say. So I'm wondering about this whole thing of podcasting. I know I love it. And when I look at you and I'm at PodFest, you love it more. So how is it that you embrace podcasting the way that you do?
Well, I love seeing people express themselves, whether I agree with them or not, or whether it's a niche I don't care about, because I just love people finding something that they're passionate about and sharing it with other people. And then podcasting is really a democratized form of communication where you own that little piece of code. I know a lot of podcasters might not technically realize this, but that little RSS feed, you own it. It's yours. It's your, ID. It's yours. And then you direct it, and it goes out to hundreds of what we call players, different sites like iTunes, but Castbox, and I could go on forever. There's hundreds of these players, and people find your message. And to me, that's just so inspiring and so exciting. So I love that part of it. And I just love the whole creator space. But podcasting allows individuals to put out their message into literally the world, a global marketplace. And if you want to learn geography, just look at your podcast stats. You'll learn about countries you might not even know exist if you start getting, listeners in different countries. I've seen podcasters to have listeners in over 190 countries. It's pretty amazing.
That is amazing. Yeah, it is. Geography. And the thought, I love the fact that we are really every time we put out a podcast, we are gaining some real estate. That's what I like to call it. Some real estate, our real estate in this big old world. And you're right. When somebody from another country, they take the time to listen and they're showing up, it's like, oh, wow, this is so cool. This really, really is. Podcasting and business. Now, I see a lot of people putting the two together. I think it's a good idea. This is something that after coming out of corporate after 26 years, it's what I decided to do. So my question for you, Chris, is what three nuggets or pieces of inspiration or information do you give people who are jumping in? They left corporate and now I'm going to take on podcasting as a business.
So I just want to put a caveat here. If someone's doing it as a hobby and they're listening to this, keep doing it. If you enjoy it, don't worry if you're not making money. I do podcasts as a hobby, and then I have ones that serve a business interest, and that's A-okay. Because I do see some people like, oh, I was really enjoying it. And then my friend said, or how much money do you make? It's like, I was just enjoying it. Don't let that person. However, there's a lot of us as well that also want to do it for a business, and that has a specific intention. So the first thing I tell people, research what you're getting into. So very simple, go on iTunes, the largest database of podcasts, and start researching terms and find out what other shows are in that space. It doesn't mean if there's a lot of shows in your space, it doesn't mean there isn't space for you. It's conversely the opposite. It means that that's a very robust space with a lot of listeners interested in it. And now you just have to spend some time strategizing what piece of that real estate, you just mentioned real estate earlier, what piece of that virtual real estate in someone's ear are you able to partake in? So for instance, someone wants to do a real estate podcast. Okay, well, if there's a lot of real estate podcasts about flipping houses, maybe you could do one about mobile homes or Airbnb. So that's what I'm saying by looking at the caveat of what that strategy is. That's one. Understand numbers. And what I mean by that is learn how to read your stats. Your stats, a lot of podcasters get statistics. If your downloads are not growing, it means the show's not growing. So understand okay, what do my stats mean? And then the last one is how do you grow your audience? And I'll give you 3 tips on this show, Margo, of how someone could grow their audience. The easiest way is networking with other podcasters. That's why for what I do, PodFest is so important because we need to meet each other to see if maybe we could collab by being on someone else's show. Or can I buy an ad on certain shows that have my audience and you could actually advertise on another show? That's another really great way. Or you could advertise with players. A lot of players allow podcasters to buy spots at the top of the player to find listeners. So that's what I would say is understand your strategy of what you're trying to accomplish. Achieve that strategy by creating the proper naming of your show and its objective, and then figure out what is your growth strategy once you understand your numbers. So that's what I would do as a business to approach. And then, you have to create a monetization case, but you kind of have to master those 2 or 3 things I just mentioned before you could really delve into monetization. And then you set a strategy for how you're going to monetize. Is it your services? Are you a consultant? Are you selling books? Do you have something of value that you think you could put in front of your audience every so often that they would partake in you? Or are you looking to create a podcast that is so big, so many people listen, that advertisers, kind of like a national radio show, are willing to go in front of your audience, pay you money to put an ad in there, and you just do the show? So that's kind of some of the monetization things. But as you know, I'm so passionate about the space. There's so many, I could go off on over hours on this stuff. There's so many different ways you could do it nowadays. It's just exciting because there's just a lot of technology is unleashing a lot of potential. Like Squadcast, we're using this amazing tool. This didn't exist when I started. We needed a tool like this. We would all use Skype actually in the early days. Zoom wasn't even robust enough. And there was only one, it was like Skype and one other thing. And we'd have issues a lot of times. But overall, we didn't know any better. It was good. Now there's all these other really amazing tools that have come online that make podcasting so much easier. So just exciting, a very exciting time to be alive.
I had to applaud y'all on that. That is so true. It's so exciting. And Chris, you see it just growing overnight, leaps and bounds, all the software that we have access to, and just even the communities. I love the community, the PodFest community that you've grown, cultivated, that you've served over on Facebook, because I went to my very first PodFest was where you broke the Guinness World Record, title for the largest attendance for a virtual podcasting conference in 1 week. Over 5,000 people. I was one of them. That was my very first introduction to PodFest. And here you are, still giving, still nurturing, still cultivating. So with all of that said, and that is a huge accomplishment, I have 2 questions out of that. How did you feel when you understood, man, we did it? We were going to break this world record, and we did it.
Well, breaking a world record, a Guinness World Record, is extremely difficult. I thought it was going to be a lot easier than it turned out to be. So we broke it by 3. 5,000 was the mark. We had 5,003 registered attendees. So we made it by 3 people. So literally, if 3 people didn't show up, we would not have made that number. So it was exhilarating. It was a watershed moment because we worked so hard for our community to come together. And we also, I believe 95% of it was open access, where we were able to give most of it for free. Some people paid for the videos that wanted to study, but it was important for us to have free access because virtually so many people were home. We could reach a global marketplace. So we were thinking what if someone in India or Africa want to show up? Do we want to sit there and figuring out what the correct conversion rate is in there? You know what I mean? So we're let's just open it up and have a freemium for everybody. So that was amazing. And it opened my eyes to, when you go virtual, how many more people you could reach. And you were part of it. We went through a lot of great lengths to make sure that it felt as close as we could to an in-person event. And I would say of the virtual events that I've been part of, from what I could see in the feedback we got, that was the closest I've seen of any event get to feel like you're with your family and you're hanging out with each other, because we would carry our attendees through all the sessions. Whereas I've been on a lot of these virtual events, people will go in for 5 minutes or they're gone. Our people were invested for the duration. And I just think that was a very, you and I were part of something very special, because we didn't know what we could do because COVID, none of us knew what was going on really. There's a lot of uncertainty, but we knew what we could do, which was we could all get together and see if we could have some fun while we're waiting to see what would happen, if that makes sense. And I think that's special. We'll never get that time again, Margo. And I think you know this, for those of us that have lived some life, you realize things aren't always equal. Like that was a special thing that happened. We still have special sauce and we create, but there's never going to be a time like that where we're in such uncertainty as a people on the globe, not just our country, on the globe. And here we are, we're all coming together from all over the world through this little thing called the laptop, and we're all sitting in and we're all helping each other. I've made so many great relationships from all of them, but the first Pod Global kind of stamped it and created that virtual momentum that has propelled us. I feel a blessing because at the time we didn't know financially, my family, how we're going to make it through. And that community coming together, really, it was a huge risk for us. And sponsors and everybody helped make that happen. And it really was a pivot point for us internally. And the team, keeping a lot of our team members on staff.
Thank you for doing that. And thank you for that transparency, because you put on a lot of events. And to take that big monumental risk, it included all of your family, but you all did it. And then the end result are relationships. And hey, we did it. Nobody else can ever be number one like that. You did it, Chris. And I mean, I want people to understand the takeaways from just saying yes and stepping up. Push the envelope to see what can be done. And that's exactly what you did, because you did. We all could see what could be done. So thank you. Thank you.
I echo that statement. That's all I could say is when you don't know what you can't do, figuring out what you can, and just, we did it though. It wasn't me. Like it was all of us together, because people would ask me, how'd you market to get all these people? I'm like, we did spend money on Facebook ads, but like, it was not in that, like we'd have to spend, if you look at like what most people spend, it would have to be in the hundreds of thousands to get that many people actively. We spent a fraction of that. It was the word of mouth. It was our community that brought a friend together. We don't have huge social numbers, but we have people that care for one another, and that shows up when you're doing events time and time again.
That I believe that I heard, and I'm looking for a piece of paper because I did record it. I understand that you are all about education and connection. And every time I hear you speak, every time you would come on the camera at PodFest, it was all about connecting or educating. And when I see you in the community, that's what it's like. So I think I hear you say, if you connect people, and if you let people know that you care about them and you are totally invested in what's going on, they're going to follow you. And that word of mouth is going to be genuine, and you're going to get where you need to go. Is that what I hear you say?
100%. I could only relate what you just said in a story. My wife and I went to 2 weddings on a weekend, or like a week apart. I just remember, for whatever reason, the one couple wasn't that well connected, and you could feel it in the room. The next week, we went to another wedding where the 2 people were so madly in love, the love spilled out over from their table to every other table. And I said to my wife, it's interesting, the whole room could feel the connection from the couple that's getting married compared to what we had seen a week prior. And she said, yeah, it's really, we would see the whole room. You could see a whole different energy. And I think when we're putting a message out to the world, whether it's a podcast or we're doing an event, the energy that you see that event with is what's going to steamroll through, and that's what people are going to feel. And I think that's a very important ingredient when you're cooking. with anything. Like I always tell my daughter when we're doing something really good, I go, "We're cooking with some heat," and she repeats it. It's funny to see a 5-year-old say, "We're cooking with some heat, right, Daddy?" But when things are going momentum, I always say we're cooking with some heat. It's getting hot. It's good. So I just love that. And as a promoter, promoters always ask me, "What's your number one key ingredient?" I mean, I'm going to tell you the obvious ones, like you have to care, but I think that besides caring, you have to be just as excited for your event as your attendees would be. So people always say, "You're excited for your event." I go, if I wasn't excited for my event, who's going to be excited for my event? So I really believe that. I said, my excitement for my event will transfer to everybody else. So if I can't create something I'm excited about, why would I do it? So that's kind of my philosophy to life.
That is so true. Even with the interview, bring the energy. Come cooking with heat. If you are,
Yeah.
what do you expect the guest is going to feel like? They're going to say, "Holy moly, what did I walk into?" Oh, this is so good, wonderful. One last question, Chris. You're in May 26th through the 29th in 2022. We're coming over there to Orlando, Florida, PodFest Expo in person. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with COVID or anything like that. So, virtual, in person, will you always blend the two forevermore? What are your thoughts?
I don't know, because I really enjoy doing a full virtual event where my attention and all our attention was in the virtual space, and I love being in a in person. Now, I think they can be blended, but I think there's times when you want to focus on one or the other, and but I do think there should be a blend. We are planning a small event in November, so here's what we're doing. We're going to do an in-person event, but it's really going to be a large virtual event with a very small in-person event attached to it. So that way we could get the ball rolling. So what I mean by that is I'll probably be sending out an email to my audience with not much fanfare, just saying, here's what it is. We'll have 200 tickets. They'll probably go very quickly. Once they're sold out, for a space that fits like 1,000 people. And then the majority of the people will be virtual before that in-person event even happens, if that makes sense. So it'll be like bookended together. The last 2 days of the virtual event will be for the people that are in person. So we're trying to figure out a balance that could work for both sides. And it takes the part that most people don't see from what I do is it takes an immense amount of money and manpower to have a huge audio visual crew when you get to the size of a PodFest and you're dealing with thousands of people. So you want to over deliver for everybody. So here's my verdict, my personal opinion. Absolutely, hybrid is going to be a thing. But what I would say to anyone listening to this, think it through, because maybe you could deliver 1 week before the in-person event, a beautiful hybrid event. And then the in-person event, yes, people could see they could come in, see the streams, but I would cherry pick the streams I would want the people at home to see, because when you're at home, you consider your time much more valuable than when you're at an event, if that makes sense. When you're at an event, you're already committed. If you're not in the room, you're going to be in the hallways making friends. When you're home, you have kids, spouses, neighbors, your work, your pets competing for your time. So if you're going to do anything, you're going to put it to someone in their home, make sure it's worth their time. That's just my thinking, if that makes sense. So like I said, I'm going to tie this back to the first question that you asked me. When people get started, the second question I think was, when people get started with their podcast, you have to have a strategy in place. So even for in-person and hybrid events, I'm going to have a strategy that delivers a superior experience to both people. I don't want to create a watered down experience where the pool people join me virtually are getting a subpar product from the people that are in person. So they're here to stay. All I would say is think it through so everybody has a great experience, or at least fail miserably so you can fix it later by at least trying. When people see you trying, they'll give you another chance if they know that the intention is pure.
Oh, that is true. That part, as they say, that part right there.
Start ugly, as I say. Start ugly. Don't worry.
Yes. Hey, and most of us do, don't we, Chris? Most of us do. Bottom line, we want to look like shining stars and the pros that we want to be, but we start ugly. Gosh. Oh my goodness, Chris Krimitsos, thank you so very much This has been wonderful. I appreciate you. I thank you. I applaud you. You've already written another book just in these 19 minutes. So
Thank you, Margo. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. You're an amazing podcaster. So thank you for putting out your message to help this medium. I hope more people follow your example. I think the technology, once you get over the tech hump, it's not that hard. And there's tools, like you said, resources. And you are part of you're in the curve where it's only getting easier. So like for anyone moving forward, joining us, it's going to get even easier as I see it moving forward. It's going to be amazing.
hey, Chris, I'm 67 years old. If I can do it, come on, people. Come on. I mean it.
I love it.
Come on.
I love it.
All right, everybody. Wow, the celebration continues. I'll see you on another video. Thanks for watching me. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Hey Podcasters. That's it for this week's episode. Be sure to follow us in your favorite podcast app or connect with us on heypodcasters.com so that you don't miss our next episode. We wish you happy podcasting and see you in the next episode.